Sambac Jasmine is just one of those plants that I feel like should be in every single landscape. If you're in Northeast Florida or a temperate, moderate grow zone, maybe Texas, California, why don't you have these? Why don't you have one of these? They smell fantastic, and unlike the other jasmines that just bloom for a month or so in the spring, you get these spring, summer, and fall. Oh, they're magnificent. I love them. I feel like there's a handful of plants that I think could find a place in any garden. You could use it as a shrub. You could use it in your perennial bed. You could use it in your butterfly areas. You could use it as an island. You could wrap a palm tree with them. You could put it on an arch trellis and let it vine up. There's just so many things you can do with them. And they're pretty tough. Look at it, isn't it pretty? It smells so wonderful. These are the buds, and when you get jasmine tea, just the jasmine part, this is what you'll be getting is dried buds. And this is what they use to make jasmine tea, jasmine rice. But it's Sambac jasmine, and there's several different varieties on the market here in Florida. This one is very prolific. Just the single open face petal flower. This one's got a spider on it, but this is what the bloom looks like on it. It comes in a double. It comes in a very large one called a tie, and then it comes in a rosebud formed one. But this one is very prolific, very fast growing, and can be shrubbed back by trimming it a few times a year, or it can be allowed to vine up a trellis. I feel like if you're going to use one for a trellis, this is the best one to use. A couple of these, like 4 or 5 of these, put into a bowl of water in an office will perfume the whole place. I remember the first time I ever saw these, I was walked into a Chinese food or an Asian food place called Lee's Dragon that usually smells like food, but when you open the door, they had a bowl of these on the counter, and you just got a blast of jasmine right in it. They also had some planted in their garden out front, and that was 25, maybe, yeah, 27 years ago, 28 years ago, and I fell in love with this and have had them in my garden ever since. It's a great plant. They can be a little bit cold sensitive in our area. Sometimes we'll get a cold that will whack them back, but they harden off as they grow, and you can plant them in full sun. You can plant them in part shade. They do a little bit better, in my opinion, in a partially shaded location than they do in a full sun. In full sun, they'll get a little bit of yellowy to them unless they're really well irrigated or nice rich soil. But they don't really care about what kind of soil they've got if they're in a partial shade. You can have sandy garbage or moist whatever, but they will root out and vine out, and then those vines will root into the ground and crawl if you don't have them up on something or you don't trim them back. So it's the most aggressive one, but also the best one for using these blooms, if you ask me. And I do love all of them. I have all of the varieties that I've ever come across in my garden, but this is the one that I like to use. I guess I bought them dried in an Asian store in a little bottle as jasmine pearls, and it was just that unopened bud. Here at the nursery and in my garden at home, these bloom in the spring, they bloom in the summer, and they bloom in the fall. So you'll have blooms on them throughout the year, setting and growing, which for me is fantastic because things like the Confederate jasmine or the star jasmines bloom in the spring, but only for a month or so, and then they're gone. But these you get to enjoy all year. This is the bud on the Grand Duke of Tuscany. Now all of this is going to open up into a big gardenia looking flower or rosebud form flower that's about 1.5 inches across. But this is just the unopened buds on this type of Sambac jasmine. You can also see a really big difference on the woodiness of this one. It's really not a good one for vining, but a good one for a compact shrub. So if you're wanting to keep one smaller, this is a better option for you. It's Grand Duke of Tuscany, Sambac Jasmine. And this one is not as aggressive as a grower. It's gonna stay, it's actually quite slow. I get maybe 6 inches on it during the whole growth season. And on a single Sambac Jasmine, you would get that immediately after trimming, just as a growth spurt. So very compact. The leaves are a bit more crinkled, generally a little darker green, and I feel like this one needs more shade. It's not one that you can put out in the sun and have it do really well. It needs a good, 6 hours would be fine, but all day long is probably a no. But smells fantastic, just like the other one. And of course, I can't get away with not showing you the ones that I have in my landscape at home. This is just a couple of the double blooms, and you can kind of see how they can get away from you if you don't whack them back. I cut these back at least once a year, usually in the spring after, the frost or whatever gets them. But they will root as they grow. If you don't, they can root in on the ground and just keep going. But I love them, and they bloom all the time. This one's still got some buds that are fixing to open, but it had lots of flowers on it before that storm the other day blew them off. There's lots more coming, and I have a couple over here, and then I do have a bell of India in the backyard, but it's not doing anything right now other than being green either. And the bell of India is just like the double, but has like a larger, the flower would be more like that big around. So maybe 1.5 inches or 2 inches on that kind. Versus like the 1 inch of this one. It is also a it is also a double flower, but not quite as prolific as these are. For me anyway, in my garden. One of my belleofindias in the backyard, and it's a younger plant. I think I planted it maybe fall of last year, but it's not doing anything right now.